and Beach Committee of the City of Rehoboth Beach. Welcome to everybody. We're calling the meeting to order at 9:03 a.m. I'd like to remind everybody to silence your phones if you would. I'd like to let everybody know that this is being videotaped, and so we need to talk up and talk into the microphones so that it can be recorded, and those that later choose to listen to it or watch it can hear us all, including members of the public. So we'll have a microphone for members of the public to pass around. Want to do a roll call for everybody in here. Also to do a sound check at the same time, if you will. Want to make sure you talk loud enough. These are the microphones up here we're talking into. And we're also going to ask everybody, members of the public, to introduce yourselves as well. I am Stan Mills. I'm chair of the Boardwalk and Beach Committee.
Frank Cole, 24 Wilmington Avenue.
Steve Curson, 210 Philadelphia Street.
Allison Stein, 84 Sussex.
Jimmy Horty, 70 Henlopen Avenue.
Guy Abernathy, 50 Wilmington.
Honey Fisher, North Boardwalk.
Brian Hancock, Star of the Sea.
Why do we have to pay? I don't. Unless you don't. No. Okay, just your name.
John Welch.
Are you from Rehoboth?
315 Stokely.
Very good. Welcome.
Tricia Davis, the Henlopen.
Dan Slago, Executive Director of Rehoboth Main Street.
Susan Gay, Commissioner.
Kevin Williams, Director of Public Works.
Keith Banks, Police Chief.
Thank you very much. Welcome to everybody, and just want to let the members of the public know you're welcome to join us in any input. We typically like ourselves up here to have the first blush and then have you all fill in with any extra comments or input, so feel free. The citizen comment at the end of the agenda is typically for things that are not on the agenda. So if you have some off the wall new topic or something, that's what that's for. But otherwise, again, you're welcome to speak early on. There are agendas up here on the podium here that has support document attachments and PowerPoint. So you might want to grab one. Thank you very much. Wanted to go to approval of minutes. They were distributed earlier to the committee. I did do a version 2, and all that is 3 edits. Allison Stein was not present at the last meeting, and then there were 2 grammatical errors. So with those 3 changes, like consideration of a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
With those 3 changes.
Those 3 changes.
Second.
We have a motion to approve with the 3 edits or amendments as noted by Honey Fisher, and a second to approve by Jimmy Horty. All those in favor of approval of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed. And so the draft minutes are now approved from our last meeting. Let's see, of May 3rd.
September.
When was it?
September 30th.
September 30th, right. Very good. So we got that off our plate. The next item of business is correspondence. We only have two notes very quickly. One is from Jennifer Duncan. She's a resident in town. She was in Cure Beach, North Carolina. If you look at the screen, you'll see a sign there that she sent along to us, knowing we were talking about recycling, and so she's just passing this along, so we can certainly pass this along to the rest of the commissioners if there's any desire to do something like that. Of course, our recycling program on the beach and boardwalk, if it comes to fruition, which we'll talk about later, only includes bottles and cans. So this goes beyond that. The other bit of correspondence I got was from a constituent in town, or letting us know, and the Environment Committee know, and Commissioner Dick Byrne know that Coca-Cola has had a program for recycling grants, and would we like to look into it? And I sent a note back that I left that up to the others, that my recollection is that Coca-Cola grant program was initiated at least a year and a half ago, may or may not be current, and by my recollection, it was kind of a quid pro quo thing. They would give you the grant if you put their Coca-Cola colored and labeled bins on the boardwalk. And so gets into commercialization. But I think what that does is gives us an opportunity in the future, perhaps at our December meeting, to talk about that whole concept of commercialization. Do we want something like that, or do we want to avoid? And that may even come up. And we can't talk about it now because it's really not. Let's put it on an agenda, or we can talk about it during our comparison studies. Is that all right?
Yeah, I just thought maybe we could see what actually they're doing and maybe copy it.
Okay. Well, remind us when we get to the recycling part on our thing. Okay. Any questions on correspondence? If not, then we'll go to old business. I just wanted to report that at the last regular commissioners meeting, 2 meetings ago, I gave them, the mayor and commissioners, our final version of the bicycle report that's embedded in this agenda. There was no reaction or action to it at that time. I also gave them a, let me see if I have it here. I also gave the commissioners see if I have it here. I don't have it up right here. A report on recycling, and I gave them our recommendation, which was to conduct a trial of recycling, at least on the boardwalk, in anticipation of it being favorable, then implementing a full-time recycling program. When I gave them slides, and that slideshow is also embedded in the program here, agenda. And basically, I said they can do nothing. There's one option. The second option is conduct a trial, and the third option was to go ahead full bore into the program, whether it's on the beach and or boardwalk, so that they would have some options. And actually, after my slideshow showed a lot of the slides that we've had here before, the 20 boardwalk towns in New Jersey that all do recycling and are successful at it, Commissioner Clusie, I think, led the charge, saying, well, let's skip the trial and let's just do it. And so a meeting ensued afterwards with the city manager, public works director, and myself representing this committee, and the chair, Charlie Garlow of the environmental committee, Dick Byrne, and I think 1 or 2 others. And we were pleased to see that the city had already started on the logistics and budgeting for implementing a recycle program on the boardwalk, because the commissioners didn't say where it should be, but we thought that on the boardwalk only would be a good first step, rather than doing that also in the beach, and certainly rather than doing public space recycling and throughout town. So that's good news. That's coming out of this committee. Thank you all.
Stan, you did a great job with that presentation too.
Oh, thank you. Remember to speak up for the microphone. Thank you very much, Frank. Any other questions on bicycles or recycling? Kevin, do you want to add anything to the recycling program other than Sharon, it's in the works, and working out logistics and a budget to present to the commissioners before you go forward?
Are we talking about it? We'll wait till I'm doing
Okay,
that group of things.
that's fine. Kevin did a single presentation for a bunch of topics, so we'll get to that shortly. The next old business is comparison of amenities and features on Boardwalk in New Jersey. I would like to put that toward the end of our thing so we can get our reports on other things. So we're going to go right to new business, review of committee membership. If you recall, the last time we met, we had a committee of 10 members. Mark Hensky did contact me and said thank you, but he needed to step aside at that point. At that point, I was contemplating how to resolve our kind of continued problem with not getting quorum. So by going from 10 members with a quorum of 6 to 9 members with a quorum of 5, I chose not to replace Mark at that point. So we've got our consistent membership here. So that should be easier for us. New business number 6B, recent report on beach nourishment in Rehoboth Beach. You can see that they've all pulled out of here. They're in Dewey Beach. Do you have something you want to say later? Okay, so we'll get a further report later. And then we're going to go to updates from city staff on city projects involving the boardwalk and beach, including but not limited to. Let me just introduce them all together, and then Kevin can give us his updates. One of the topics is restroom facility improvements. If you recall, out of this committee, we recommended further analysis of restroom fixture install number, capacity, and sufficiency. We looked at made recommendation for adding family restrooms, for consideration of adding changing rooms, adding perhaps a new facility in the North Rehoboth area, beach patrol facility improvements such as adding a second floor observation deck. Out of this committee, we said asked for shower tower replacements that they were replaced for this past summer. We've asked for more dune crossing access mats, and the city's fulfilled that with help from some of our General Assembly members. Proposed cell tower installations. We're aware that the wireless providers want to put small cell tower units on the boardwalk and on the east side, which we didn't favor because of the aesthetics issue. We wanted to talk about boardwalk maintenance program at some point, and whether we want to stick with wood or plastic. And then emergency lanes on the beach and recycling. So let's just turn it over to Kevin for updates on city projects or things involving the city relative to the beach and boardwalk.
All right, let me see if I can get. Okay, so as Stan said, we have quite a few topics, but as we get to each individual one, let's talk about that one and not wait till the end, otherwise we'll just do it. So we talked a little bit about beach nourishment already. They were out for about 2 weeks or so on Rehoboth Beach, pumping the sand and delivering it and spreading it. And of course, our nor'easter this week probably took about half of it away. So we'll wait till the end of the day today and go look and see how much is still remaining. But last week it was looking great. There's a couple of shots of the operation there. They moved down to Dewey. They finished down in Dewey last week as well, and have started to demobilize. So few pieces of equipment still out there down by Deauville Beach that they'll be getting out probably this week. There's a shot of the kind of the dredge offshore as he's coming back to the drop site where they would pump it up onto the beach. And then a shot of just some of the pipe, outfall pipe, as it comes onto the beach.
So
sure.
We can talk about each
Yep.
side. If you've been on the beach, you'll see that there's a huge scarps, S-C-A-R-P. That's where the oceans come in and the sand's up here and it carves it away and everything. I would ask everybody to be mindful of Tony Pratt, formerly of DENREC, when he was here and gave a speech about a year ago. that, if you recall, he said over the winter time, the beach profile changes, and that's because a lot of the sand is sucked out into the ocean. But then in summertime, if you recall, he said the profile changes and it accretes, the sand comes back onto the thing. So that has happened most years that I've seen. And so this is, while it visually looks like a terrible, terrible thing, hopefully Mother Nature's kind of us and returns the sand for summertime. So overall, was it worthwhile? I would say absolutely. So very good. And this project went twice as fast as I've ever seen, and I've seen them from the beginning. And that's because this is the first time that I've ever seen 2 dredges up there. So they get a lot of kudos. Thank you.
Yeah, Great Lakes was the contractor, and I think they just came straight over from New Jersey and went right to work. It was good. As you know, we did renovations to our 3 boardwalk restroom facilities this past year. New partitions, new flooring, new paint, new countertops, new hardware, new mirrors, all those kind of nice updates. I think the general consensus was that they looked much nicer than previously. Well, maybe not surprisingly, but the partitions and everything held up very, very well over the summertime. We were a little concerned that the kids get in there, or whoever gets in there and beats up on them, and maybe we spent a lot of money for very little benefit, but they held up great all summer and looked fantastic, we all thought. The total upgrades, we finished all the accounting on them. Delaware Avenue, we spent about $190,000 on. That was the one we did the most work on. Baltimore, about $145,000, and Rehoboth, about $140,000. So a total of about $550,000. I think there was a big discussion when we first proposed doing this. It was $750,000 or $1 million or whatever. It came in right about $550,000 or so. But very nice improvements.
In the minutes we just approved, there's a lot of applause from this committee to you all for doing that. Everybody up here indicated that they look beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks. Part of that same project was we updated virtually all the shower towers and foot showers and water fountains on the boardwalk and on some of the surrounding parks. You can see we also, the shower tower, the new style of shower towers, and we went from, I think, 4 originally, and we now have 10. So basically, it's 5 on each side of Rehoboth Avenue. We kept Rehoboth Avenue at the foot shower level, just for the view shed or viewscape, and then put shower towers on 5 on each side as you go north and go south. Worked out very well. They seem to get a lot of use, as we all knew they would, and people seem to appreciate them. Water fountains, a nice architectural upgrade from what we had before that had been showing its age. This was about $66,000 worth of work on the 10 shower towers and however many odd foot showers and water fountains. But another nice upgrade to the boardwalk facilities.
Anybody else could comment too. I like the blue color. That's kind of a nice new thing. That's very nice. In the off season we have canvas covers for them, but I noticed that some of them are actually missing at this point. Or have they been reinstalled, or?
The foot showers themselves, or the
showers.
canvas covers?
No, the showers themselves.
Yeah, so we uninstalled several of them as part of the winterization process, and they'll all get reinstalled, and covered, hopefully here pretty soon.
Okay,
right.
Very good. So they're coming back. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about the mechanics. I mean, they look great. Everybody loves them. The question is, intuitively, when I walk up to that thing, I hit the top button. I think I'm going to get the top shower, but I don't. I get the middle shower. Or if you come down and you only want to do like your legs and you hit the middle button, the top one comes on. And I didn't understand how they're all the same. I went and I checked each one, so it must be a design issue.
Don't have a clue. First I'd even heard that.
I've seen a lot of people
issue.
very surprised, myself included.
We probably did that on purpose, just to keep them on their toes, right? Hit the low
I
one, you hit
guess.
the shower. The kids do that all the time.
You think you're
No,
going
I
to
had
keep your hair dry, and all of a
known.
sudden,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe it's an internal configuration. We hooked to the wrong pipe. I don't know. We'll ask that question and see.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Yeah. So those 3 buttons, you hit the middle one and the foot comes on, you hit the top one and
No, the
Other
top
way.
button, the top button hits the
middle
middle
shower.
shower, and the bottom does the bottom.
Okay, and the
But the
middle
top
does the top.
button brings the middle one on.
Middle
So
button
those
does
two
the
are
top
like,
one.
yeah, those two are reversed on every one.
Yeah, okay,
Same
interesting.
person did it.
Me.
Yeah, well, you can bet that happened, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We're just kind of looking forward to some of the things we're looking at with respect to continued updating of the restroom facilities. One of the things this committee and others have recommended for a long time is we get some family restrooms, some changing rooms, that kind of thing. So we've been talking to one of our architects, and he's come up with kind of a schematic on how we could do that if the commissioners want to do that. But here's kind of a sketch on what we think can be done out at Delaware Avenue. You can see the top left cut is as it looks from the boardwalk. So as you can see, most of the work is outside of the structure itself and on each side. So we would add the family restrooms and the changing rooms that way. Is some minor reconfiguration on the inside, but it's just kind of an interior wall and adding one toilet on the women's side. But it actually gives us 2 accessible family restrooms with changing tables, 4 accessible changing rooms, and 5 regular changing rooms. So our hope would be, if the commissioners want to do this, is we could finalize the design, advertise, and go to construction on this at Delaware Avenue probably this fall. If everything would go according to plan, and the commissioners would want to do that.
I just got one comment.
Sure.
We continue to eliminate the view for the ocean. You're taking on both sides of that. That's only, I mean, first they put the restroom there above grade before you used to be able to see over it. Now you're just gonna wipe out the entire view of the ocean from that street.
Noted. Yeah. You're gonna love Baltimore Avenue. So I guess we try to add what we can add. I mean, you can't create restrooms out of thin air and put them underground. So that's kind of what we've come up with. Yes, sir.
Doesn't that can you just go back to that footprint? The additions though remain within the footprint of the actual bathrooms and Delaware.
You can see where they sit kind of on the
Right, so they're
existing
still-
decking
exactly.
that's on the sides.
Yeah. So the remaining passageways north and south of those changing rooms will remain the same.
Correct. Now, you will say this, you see down in here, this part right here at the bottom of the right-hand drawing is kind of that area now that has the fire hydrant and some grass and bushes. So
Right,
there is some additional back here on both corners.
West side.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep. So looking at the same opportunities at Baltimore, got a couple things going on there. One is the lifeguard station there takes up a significant portion of that building. So one of the plans we're looking at would create a second level on Baltimore Avenue, move the lifeguards upstairs, and leave the first floor mainly for restrooms, and then the medical room and the doctor's area downstairs. If the commissioners want to do this and come up with the money to do that, our plan for this would be design it in fiscal year 2021, which is the budget we're currently preparing. So our budget fiscal year 21 would start April 2020. So design it next year and then would construct the following fall. So fall of 2021 would be the plan here. So Delaware Avenue would be the first one done, and then a year later follow up with Baltimore. But again, it adds, I think on the men's side, 2 urinals, on the women's side, 5 additional toilets and 2 sinks, 2 accessible bathrooms, 2 accessible changing rooms, and then 5 regular changing rooms. To do that, then, we got a bunch of options on the second floor for the lifeguards. We're working with the beach captain now to see what he needs. He wants the world. Obviously, we all do, but we're trying to get him what he needs. Obviously, he needs more room for lockers and female facilities than he has now. It's currently pretty tight for him downstairs. So we're working with him for that. It also gives him access to a third-level observation deck, which he's been a proponent for, to get the ability to see the beach from that facility. So you can get up to that third level, just look down and see what's going on the beach. I think that's it on Baltimore. So other than the same comment about losing some of the view of the water, because that's a whole second story and an observation deck on the top of that facility. But again, improves the numbers and the physical nature of the restroom facilities themselves. Next thing Stan asked me to talk about was, the trash collection system on the boardwalk has gotten a lot of scrutiny over the years. I guess several years ago, we used to have the trash truck on there. A couple years ago, we went to the Polaris pulling the trailer. So we'd been looking at kind of an electric vehicle with a configurable rear end that you can kind of fit to our particular use. We went down and demoed the one down in Ocean City that they have. It's 4 or 5 years older, but looked like it would be a really good fit for us. The vendors was supposed to bring a model out for us to test on our boardwalk this month. I guess he ended up selling that one too quickly, so he didn't get it out here. He's still trying to do that this calendar year to get a vehicle out here for us to try. Obviously, that would get Polaris and a trailer off the boardwalk. It goes to electric vehicle, which is a nice thing to do. It came on added significance when we started talking about recycling, because the recycling program has a whole bunch of other requirements with it as well, and maybe this is the right vehicle for the recycle piece on the boardwalk. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. This particular vehicle, outfitted as we think we would want it outfitted, is somewhere in the range of $40,000 to $50,000. It is street capable, which is good, because if we have to take recycle out to the recycle yard, you have to go outside the city to get to it. And this would basically replace the need for the Polaris and the trailer to use it on the boardwalk trash.
Kevin, so the bed on this would be big enough so you don't need a trailer behind it?
Correct. You would just throw them in there. It has you can get an extended bed, and then they make custom-made kind of rails that you can maybe lift on and off, because, we're throwing the bags. You don't want to throw them up over top of the rails. So we'll come back to this just a little bit when we talk about the recycle. Stan mentioned our access mats. We currently have 9 of the 24 or so beach crossings that have some form of access mat, either the Moby mat or the access mats. The most recent addition, I think, was Stokely, which Representative Schwarzkopf, I guess, found the funds for late this past summer. Our plan this year in the budget is requesting enough funds to do 3 additional ones. Yet to be determined which particular crossings we would put them on, but obviously we want to try to space them around. But just to let you know, these increase our maintenance requirements considerably, because these don't just put them down and leave them down and forget them. Down at the toe end, it's hard to maintain sometimes on the slope, because they'll start to wash out, the beach will wear away, and all of a sudden now we've got kind of a humped access or a humped ramp down there, which causes problems. And then also with storms, we have to go down and at least roll them back up to the top of the dune to get them out of the storm, and then relay them after the fact. And in fact, I guess in the old days, we would just remove them all and haul them back to the yard and then bring them back. So we tried rolling them up to the dune crossing, or the top of the dunes. This year seemed to work pretty well. And I guess we're going to try to continue to do that. But, you still got to go out. You got to, do the blower, clean them off every day, and make sure that the toe and the various dips and stuff are taken care of, or they cause additional problems.
Kevin, one of the things this committee highlighted in the past discussion on beach access mats was the desire to kind of return to an original template that for the handicap accessible dune crossings, not having only the mat that gets you to the toe of the dune or onto the beach, but also the wider mats for actually sitting on parallel to the toe of the dune. Are we making any more progress on that? Because it looks like at Laurel maybe we can have success, but with the configuration of the handicap dune crossing turning to the northeast, it looks like that we're not gonna be able to have anything up there.
Probably not there, and it's also kind of our narrower part of the beach, which, you know, causes us problems every time there's a storm. And then the other piece that you're well aware of is, you know, the sighting of cats and what's the
Cats and
event?
Lynham.
Cats and Lynham's sheds. So we've got to stay ahead of them so that we know where they're putting them, and we tell them where to put them so we know that we can put out the kind of the viewing platform, for lack of a better word, for the mats. So a couple things we have to kind of, you know, work hard to make sure we do in advance of them coming on board. Because once they set them, they're very averse to trying to move them. And then that has a lot of impact on where we can lay out that viewing platform.
Seems to me that's an easy resolution. You make your decision first, but I just want to remind everybody that the 2 handicap accessible dune crossings were co-located with the most number of handicap parking spaces. You know, you've got them at Laurel, and then at the end of Maryland, you've got 4 or 6 spaces. Thank you.
Now on to the recycling program. So there's a lot of stuff going on with this. You know, first of all is what we're going to use. Right? So just to let you know, there's roughly 125 or so trash cans on the boardwalk during the summertime. So we need about 125 recycle cans to sit right next to them. Currently, we use a 55-gallon drum that we get free of charge. And we have a top from Lowe's or Home Depot, one that kind of sits on top. It's not built for those, so it's a little bit bigger than the can themselves. So every time there's a big windstorm in the summer, we have to go around, pull the lids off, put them in the pit over by the bandstand, and kind of hide them out of the wind until the wind dies down, and go back and put them on. So we think, that's first thing is, do we want to use something similar to that for the recycling program? We don't think we want loose lids on the recycling. It'd be just too easy to lift it up, throw your pizza box or your diaper or whatever into the recycle bin, which will cause us a lot of problems. So doing a little research, we found Belson makes a lid that is supposedly compatible with a 55-gallon drum. So we've ordered one to see how tightly that fits. And if it does, they all, you know, the same size for the recycle lid that we could then use as well. A problem with that is there's not an unlimited supply of these 55-gallon barrels. So do we want to go start purchasing them, or do we want to look at a commercial product that we would go purchase for the recycle bin? So initially, our thought is we would continue to use the barrels for the trash as we're currently doing, and then look for a commercially available product for the recycle. You know, if something like this, and then with the recycle lid on it, and as Stan mentioned, we're looking at doing just bottles and cans. But again, we've got to try the lids on our barrels, which hopefully we'll be able to do in the next week or so, and to see if that is an option. If it is, then, you know, maybe we do barrels, both for recycle and for trash. Or do we want something that's visibly completely different, although we could color them differently, but something completely different. So we're still working on that, on what we actually are going to want to do. You know, just to buy one set, you know, is about $300 or $400. So you throw that times, you know, 125, and it gets pretty expensive in a hurry. So one of the other considerations that we want to make is that we want to make it 2 completely separate operations. The last thing we want to do is have, you know, the Polaris pulling a trailer, and 2 guys are pulling trash bags and throwing them in, and the next 2 guys are pulling recycle bags and throwing them in. It's just wrong. I mean, the appearance would be, you know, you're not recycling, you're actually just taking it to the dumpster, and we don't want that. So our thought is you have to have 2 completely separate operations. That ties into the electric vehicle we talked about earlier. Maybe that's a way to differentiate it. Do trash similar to the way we're doing now, do recycle with the electric vehicle, and then maybe look long-term down the range, maybe down the road, of maybe getting the second vehicle. So you have one for trash, one for recycle. But we want to keep them separate operations. One of the things we talked about also is using, you know, like a clear bag for the recycle, because one of our issues is going to be you have to inspect that. So we don't send a contaminated load to the transfer station. So if we have it clear, we can see visually if there's something in there, rather than necessarily cutting it open, laying it on the ground, and then handling it over to to the recycle bin. So a lot of things we're still kind of working through with respect to both the operation and with the facilities or the containers that we want to use.
And we, remember this committee wanted to look at the coloration of the trash cans to see if we want to get rid of. So that's been unresolved, and it could be that that conversation comes up again.
I would expect it to, yeah, because I think philosophically, we would want to go with a blue recycle container. That's kind of the given color, right, for recycling. So yeah, so then we would want to come up with something else separate for the trash cans that we're currently using.
Do you recall the colors that we picked? Because we never saw them because we aborted our one walk or something. But do you recall the color? Was there a gray to match the light poles and a tan and something else?
I think we had a gray, a black, and a tan. I think are the three that we painted up that day it was raining so badly. So yeah, and they've been painted over and used, so I don't have them to kind of show. So if we, depending upon what we do with the recycle piece, we'll want to revisit, the color on the cans. Now that'll have to be a fairly quick process because if we're gonna go blue recycle and we've got to repaint, a whole bunch of cans, we'd have to repaint on the order of 500 cans because you'd also want to do the beach cans and the city cans that are now blue. So we'll have to make that decision fairly.
Would it be worthwhile to go ahead and restore those three cans to three colors and take some pictures of them next to a blue recycle bin, and we present that either to us or to the commissioners or something?
Yeah.
Possibly.
Absolutely.
All right, great.
Anything else on recycling?
I know it's probably a matter of cost, I'm sure, but is there any way the two containers could be combined so it's just one container?
We didn't really like that idea because then it gets just to be tough to manhandle, right? You're kind of moving these in place and pulling them in the wintertime and that kind of thing. And if they're both connected, then it becomes twice as heavy and a little less maneuverable. So we like the idea of having them separate.
And the recycling can's just gonna be the round hole, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
See, the center cut here is what we're thinking about for the recycle. I just showed that because we are buying one of those so we can try it on our drums to see if it fits as well. Because if it does, that'd be a great addition to our trash right now. So we don't, if they kind of snap onto those barrels, then that would save us a lot of effort, in the winter, or in the summertime when there's a storm. Thoughts on the electric vehicle for recycling? Thoughts on electric vehicle for trash and or recycling? I mean, what's kind of the consensus? Is there one?
I like any of the mini vehicles, frankly. I think if you can get rid of the trailer, it's less cumbersome trying to get it through the crowds. And so probably electric would be good. I guess my only question would be, can people hear the truck coming up behind them when they're walking? I've always thought maybe we need the good humor bells on them or ding-a-ling or something, But.
Next up, just briefly on the small cell tower. Sam talked about, I guess it's recent federal legislation that limited what municipalities can do with respect to limiting the installation of these cell towers. So this gives you just a quick snapshot of, this was Verizon's initial request, and it's 18 on the boardwalk. So if you look at our decorative poles, you can imagine what that would do to the kind of the consistent look down the boardwalk. And we'll show you some examples that they're providing or that they've given us to look at already here in a second. But and then this is just boardwalk. So they have another submission of various places throughout, the city itself as we move toward this 5G network service that I guess is coming soon. But, the folks on the beach that want to watch their movie while they're laying on the beach aren't able to do that, I guess, as easily as they would like. So we want to get improved service to the folks laying on the beach. This is just kind of a mock-up of what they've proposed or what they're proposing for replacing the decorative lights on the boardwalk. You can see the one on the left is kind of an existing shot of the current poles. The one on the right is just kind of a Photoshopped version of you plug in the antenna and you put on the panel box or whatever on the side of the light pole, and kind of the look you would have. Somewhat misleading in that, you know, it's a Photoshop of the existing pole, so dimensions don't really line up. One of the things we're stressing with them, we want still that, at a minimum, the kind of the top of line of the globes on the lights to be very consistent. So same height poles, so that as you look off the Boardwalk Plaza's monitor in the morning, you know, you look down the Boardwalk, all those lights are nice and perfect row, and they all look the same. So we're trying to make sure that we convince them that that's the right thing to do. Looking over at kind of the engineering drawing that they submitted, a little bit different in that it has, you know, 3 different smaller boxes mounted on the pole, and a little different configuration on the top. So one of the things that we learned our lesson from, I guess last year or 2 years ago, when they put currently we have 2 on Rehoboth Avenue and 1 on the Boardwalk, 1 on Delaware Avenue, Restroom, and 1 on Wilmington. If you look at the ones on the Boardwalk, or I'm sorry, on Rehoboth Avenue, a little bit different than what they had submitted that they were going to have. But when they show up and they start putting them up, you know, you kind of get what you get. They're similar, they're just not exact. And then the other piece is, you know, Delmarva required them to put a standalone meter off pole. So, and then now you have an H-frame next to the pole, and you got all the stuff that goes associated with that. Same thing happened on the Boardwalk. We did the one volleyball light. It's really tall, and their cut sheet shows a nice little box, you know, 2/3 way up. Don't really notice it too badly. But when it comes here and gets installed, I mean, the box is huge, right? So you definitely see it if you're looking down the line of volleyball poles, lights. And again, they had to run the feeder, I guess, all the way across under the Boardwalk and up behind the Baltimore Avenue restroom. So they got a big H-frame, you know, sitting back there by those transformers, if you're kind of familiar with where I'm looking or talking about. So one of the things we learned is that, you know, you take your engineering drawing a little bit with a little grain of salt and make them come up with a real, you know, hard copy submittal so you can just see what it is and how it's going to be configured. I guess they're working with Delmarva now to see if they can mount the meter just to the pole. I think we would like that better than an H-frame off to the side. So our goal is to try to minimize, you know, the various looks on the Boardwalk. We want to have as consistent as we can and as uniform as we can. The other thing that Sharon did last week or week before, we met with Verizon and AT&T and said, hey, this is Verizon. They came in with AT&T. Are you going to come in with 18? And all of a sudden, are we going to have 35 of these, you know, on the Boardwalk? And if that's the case, then we need to maybe we do all 55 of them so that they all look alike. So we're still kind of wrestling with them on that. I'm not really optimistic that those guys really want to work together because they have different objectives. But we're pursuing that to hopefully we just want everything to be as consistent looking the entire length of the Boardwalk. And I don't know if you've seen the Ocean City has kind of oddball ones, really large base. I mean, they painted them all white, so they kind of blend in, but it's a huge base, and it's just a completely different look on the tower. So we're trying to minimize that as much as we can. But I think, in all honesty, the communications companies are in the driver's seat with this. The federal government has made it pretty tight on being able to restrict what they do and where they do it.
Understand, they may be in the driver's seat for some of that, but you are doing your best to promote uniformity or require uniformity. So in other words, the Verizon design that was just shown, you're submitting it to the other 3 wireless companies so that you can try to get meeting of the mind so that all 4 would have the same results, correct?
Right, and they're all, the poles that have been submitted so far are commercially available. So as soon as if we pick one, we can require then Verizon to kind of use that vendor for the pole, or AT&T similarly. So whatever pole we ultimately select, I think we can make all of them the same even between the vendors. And they seem very receptive to that. This is just a shot of we did 2 on Rehoboth Avenue, and and kind of see the, it's a bigger, much bigger, wider base, and then the antenna at the top.
Kevin, is there a provision, looking out 10, 20 years from now when, things, as technology advances, things usually get smaller, is there a provision for the space to revert back to the city, to go backwards and give that space back to the city? Or is this going to be Verizon's kind of domain, from here into perpetuity?
Certainly not the expert on the development of the small cell technology, but from what they're telling us is that you're going to need more and more of these. They haven't talked about them getting specifically smaller, other than just more of them because of the driverless vehicles technology, the need for the streaming services. Those kinds of things are driving to this 5G, they call it.
Do you think there's any danger that these cell companies are going to come back and ask for a few more feet on either side, or to kind of expand on what they have on the right-hand side picture?
I'm not sure. I mean, I just don't know what they would gain from that. I don't know though. Hadn't kind of really thought about that. Mm-hmm.
Is there some kind of lease agreement for each post?
Yeah, they're still
Verizon and
city.
T-Mobile?
We still own the pole.
So Verizon and T-Mobile, Sprint pay the city for that space.
Correct.
So the lease agreement could have in there a time limit every 3 years. If the city's not happy with it, then the cell phone companies have to remove their equipment or revert back to the original posts.
Yeah, I don't know that of the lease agreements. I know they've just met. Was it last? The board just met on the amount of the fee, either the last meeting or the workshop meeting. Yeah, and I don't know about the specific of a timetable on how long the lease is for or what have you.
And the power to each antenna, that is paid for by the telecommunications company,
That's
not
correct.
by the city.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
I understand this is just along the boardwalk. Are they proposing anything along down past the boardwalk, toward North Rehoboth, down around Deauville or anything?
I don't know that I've seen any submissions for that. There are certainly been submissions for elsewhere in the city, either going higher on an existing Delmarva pole or a new pole altogether, and a couple we saw at street ends, at the boardwalk, not on the boardwalk, but at the street end by the boardwalk. So that was part of the discussion we had with the multiple companies the other day, is to let's try to figure out how best to make it kind of a uniform thing throughout the city.
Yeah, 'cause that end you'd run, there's just you have those old gooseneck.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah. Anything else on the small cell?
Any idea what the range is of these?
I don't know. I know it's not as far as it is under the 4G network, which is why you have to do more of them and you have to get them down closer to the user. It doesn't have as much ability to transmit through walls and buildings and that kind of thing, which is one of the reasons that they're looking at the east end of the boardwalk as opposed to somewhere on the west end where it would have to maybe have some interference from the adjacent buildings.
I just have one last question.
Sure.
Are any of the condo buildings or any of the hotels, the ones, I think a couple of them may have like a lease for cell towers and things like that. Would they go away if we do this, or?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Those would be kind of individual agreements they have with the private, building owners at this point. I don't know how that would be impacted.
Okay, thank you.
Kevin, has there been a discussion about the impact of putting them close to residential areas? Like, I really wouldn't want one of those sitting right 15 feet from my residence.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I can only presume they have, because they're putting these all over the place, that someone has looked at, the impact on the human body. I just don't know. Yeah. It's like, just briefly, in that it was a federal regulation that has recently been enacted, yeah. Okay, moving on to kind of north end of city, Lake Girard Park. So one of the things we did this past year, or this current budget year, was had a consultant come in and develop a parks management plan, and looked at kind of our existing facilities. One of the things they identified for us was that the Lake Girard tot lot is not, I mean, it's not accessible. Some of the equipment's old and a little bit in disrepair. So one of their recommendations is that immediately we need to update the Lake Girard tot lot. So we started thinking about how we would go about doing that. And is it in the same footprint? Is it somewhere else in that park or whatever? So rather than just pick a spot and say, okay, here's where we're going to put the playground, we're starting to look or trying to look at that whole area holistically and say, okay, where is the best spot for the tot lot? Is it there? We know that this committee has made several recommendations over the years of we need restrooms on the north end of the boardwalk. Is this the place to do that? Is this a place to do that? Is that the best way to come around there and tie the city as you come in from the kind of the north, Surf Avenue, or come down Columbia and you get down there and get to that side of town? Is that a good kind of presentation, gateway to the city or whatever? So anyway, we hired a consultant that's kind of developing a master plan for kind of that Lake Girard Park. And it's, kind of the north end of the boardwalk, that triangle park that's kind of underutilized now, that parking lot, Lake Girard Park, Grenoble, that whole area of town, and just kind of come up with, if you had a clean slate and you just wanted to develop, update that area of town, what would you want to do and where would you want to do it? All in an effort to say, where's the right spot for the tot lot? So we don't put it down and then wish 2-3 years from now that we hadn't put it there, that we'd put it somewhere else. So in that effort, the tot lot, from what we've seen so far, close to where it is, but maybe pushing it up just a little bit. It's got to get a little bigger because of the requirements for the accessible nature of the playground. So, but it looks like it's in what would be the best spot. So this year, I think the intent is to ask the board for funds to regenerate or rebuild the Lake Girard tot lot, and we'll probably put it right in here. That's where we're looking.
How much bigger than the existing tot lot do they expect it will be?
I don't know that it's actually been designed yet. Talking with Liz, she has a designer that she uses for those. So as my understanding is, it would still start about here, so just kind of about where it is now, but it would enlarge and kind of come up closer into around the sidewalk area and like that. So a little bit bigger and a little bit farther, I guess, to the west of where it sits right now. But basically where it is, and just expanding it out into that general area.
They think that more people will come because it is never used now. I live up that end, and I take my grandkids over, and we're the only people in the park.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know whether it's better park, gets more use, or whatever.
Thinking about adding a restroom to that site?
We're looking at in the master plan where we would do that, and is that the right place to do it? We don't own a lot of property, obviously, on the north end, so that would be a place that we're looking at. I think we talked about that at one of the earlier meetings. That we're thinking about looking at where we would put one if we did want to put one up there. But I think, pretty much everything's on the table up there. They looked at it with a, kind of a blank slate, like I said. One of the things we did kind of talk to them about is to do that. If you looked at this little piece up here, Surfside Park, very underutilized. We could reconfigure that a little bit, and then, maybe this committee's talked many times about that bike access on that little, and how it gets around there and all that. So they're looking at that. And one of the concepts we've seen is kind of make that part of the bike trail and bike racks and all that right in here, and then you tie that into, make a bike lane on Surf going out, and then it ties right into, I guess it's Surf or Ocean as you go out into North Shore. So tie all that together to get bicyclists in more safely to to Rehoboth. So one of the things that they're looking at. The other thing that they're looking at is this is a kind of a crazy intersection, you know, Lakeview and Lake and Surfside. It's just crazy trying to get in and out of there. So looking at a way, if there's one to kind of make that a little safer bit of an intersection right there. Yeah, so that's kind of things we're looking at. All generated because we wanted to make sure we put the tot lot back in the right spot. And I guess there's been some talk of maybe changing the Grenoble parking from diagonal, which seems to cause a lot of problems with people backing in and out of spaces on the diagonal and then having to turn around at an odd angle. They're looking to see is there enough room to do head-in parking down there, which they feel is much safer. But we'll see what they come back with.
So, I'm sorry, is there a time plan on getting this, I guess, the master plan?
Yeah, so I think that the only thing that we've really kind of locked in is the desire to do the tot lot right away, just because it's not accessible right now, and we need an accessible park, you know, in the city. So that's kind of the first look, is see if we can get that in the budget for this year, while we maybe get enough funds in to do the design or finish, maybe implement a particular piece of the kind of the master plan once they come up with that. And I think they're coming to the next workshop meeting for the board with some ideas of what they've come up with so far. Is the workshop meeting or board meeting? Workshop meeting in December. So yeah, so we'll see.
When is that?
And who's designing, or who's deciding this? What committee? Where is this being discussed and designed? Is it this committee?
No, you're presenting it, the master plan, what I heard, to the Board of Commissioners,
That's
right?
correct.
Right. Yeah.
The Board of Commissioners is the one that.
So what we've seen over at least a year and a half is the different committees have different recommendations. Sometimes they conflict. So we couldn't really get a good consensus as to what was the right way, like bikes, for instance, down there at Surfside Park. What's the best way for that? So we couldn't get consensus on the two committees. So we said, well, let's have a professional kind of come in and look at what they would recommend for that. So then they'll come back, brief the commissioners, and then I guess they'll probably send pieces of it out maybe to the various committees to get recommendations on specific items with it. And then, of course, then they just got to decide which ones they like and which ones they want to fund.
Does that consultant include a bathroom at that end of the boardwalk?
One of the options is to have a restroom facility somewhere, and I'm not sure if it's here in the park, whatever, but that's one of the things they're trying to determine whether the best place would be to put one, knowing that we need something at that end. Yeah.
Definitely is a need, that north end. Have they looked at putting it at Deauville Beach? 'Cause I hear a lot of people up there voicing frustration, even the tennis players.
Yeah, I don't know that, do we own that? That we could put a facility there? Yeah. So that would be an item, but yeah. I think right now we just put the Porta Johns out there at the beach itself, or at the tennis courts, yeah. And I think that was it. Did I miss any of the things you
No,
wanted
you
to
hit them all.
discuss?
The only thing I can think of would be, have you contemplated emergency lanes on the beach?
No.
Now, the timing of asking this is terrible with our beach succumbing to the storm, so maybe that's just, it happens or it doesn't, you know?
We don't want to make the beach captain too happy, right? We're looking at the platform, give him a new little facility maybe. We want him to be happy. We don't want him to be too happy.
Very good.
But no,
Thank
we
you.
did not specifically look at kind of the vehicle lane on the beach.
I'm very, very appreciative of you bringing slides and
Sure.
slideshow and your time to create it and be here. Any further questions on status of city projects relative to the boardwalk and beach? Anybody out there? If not, then we thank you. And what follows that is report on the summer statistics. The Delaware Avenue Kiosk is manned by volunteers, I believe. But every year they keep a list of statistics. And if you recall in past years, Joe, you changing me over?
Yeah, you've got the con.
There we go. There we go. if you recall from their communicating with us, that's how we learned about the desire for more shower towers, the lessen lines and restrooms, and the need for family changing rooms and family restrooms. So they submitted this set of statistics. You all have that, it's embedded in the agenda. The only thing I highlighted was changing clothes, that people are still asking, where can they change clothes? They didn't have a category for family restrooms, so I'm not sure if anybody asked for those or not. We know they did, in fact, because John Dewey that comes here has asked for them many times. So if there's no questions on that, we'll go to the next item. I just wanted you to have that. And the next item is back to old business. Comparison of amenities and features on boardwalks in New Jersey, Maryland, and Delaware, and consideration of recommendations for any additional amenities for Rehoboth Beach. If you recall, put together a slideshow. Goodness, it took a little time to put them together and label them. There's a link in your agenda because it's too big to embed in there that you can take a look at. I of course, I went and toured all these towns, so I found it very interesting going there and also looking at them. And former Commissioner Jay Legree, I want to thank him. He's probably watching from Texas now. And he went on the tour with me and provided a lot of photographs also. So maybe we can get him at the next meeting to give us some impressions of the other towns. But with the budget coming up soon, if there's any recommendations for us for new amenities, for anything new, we need to get it out now or by the December meeting to the city manager so she can consider putting that in the budget. And so that's part of what this is now. Frank indicated last time maybe one methodology for looking at and comparing boardwalk towns is to create our own brand or something. How do we create it? What do we want to be? Of course, we've got to remember that our mission statement is to maintain the beach and boardwalk as major assets, but our guiding principles are to be clean, safe, friendly, do no harm. Aesthetics is important. Aesthetics meaning view sheds and views out toward the oceans and viewed north and south of the boardwalk and things like that. So I don't know if we want to talk a little bit how we want to approach this, if we want to talk about branding and what we might want to propose new for the boardwalk, if anything.
I think what you and Jay Legree do is really helpful. Rather than reinvent the wheel on all these different issues, you're able to bring us slides and show us what other towns are doing, and then we can pick and choose, like, yeah, that looks like it works, no, that probably doesn't work. And rather than reinvent the wheel, we're able to, thanks to you guys, to take a look at what other towns are doing and find what might work for us.
Well, that's where the point we're at today. So today, and maybe follow up at the December meeting, analyze these things. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts. I tried to divide them into different categories and things. There's a category of probably 100 slides just for street scenes or boardwalk scenes. There's probably another 100 slides for beach scenes versus boardwalk scenes. There's probably 200 slides for amenities and things like that. I have some thoughts. If anybody else wants to start first, then jump in. Well, let me just show you some of my notes here. I started with the concept of branding. How do we want to be perceived by the public, and how does the public describe our boardwalk? We've gotten accolades and for having an old-fashioned wood boardwalk. And if you go on Ocean City, Maryland's website, you'll see that they tout they've got an old-fashioned wood boardwalk. And I'm pleased with it. I'm a carpenter, I'm a woodworker, cabinet maker, so I love wood. I am mindful that the original boardwalk committee of 12 years ago did a big debate on wood versus composite. And at that time, they concluded with wood. So I'm kind of sold on wood. But for me, the branding and how do we want to be described is I'd like the public to walk away, go home saying, hey, everything was clean, everything was safe, everything was friendly. Clean meaning that we've taken sufficient measures to appear safe. We've got security cameras perhaps, that our lighting is sufficient, that we have sufficient visibility of police. I think that's very important, the police presence. Friendly, that we're well maintained. You know, our bathrooms there in our renovation, I'll tell you, rival any other boardwalk town I ever went to. They're just beautiful and clean, and we need to maintain them as clean. Handicap accessibility to me is under the friendly thing, that we need to maintain friendliness and also maintain that businesses are accessible during any reconstruction. That's part of our guiding principle. The adequacy of restroom facilities, family restrooms, number of stalls and fixtures, we're already addressing those. But that's where I would want the public to say, hey, you know, I've used their restrooms and they're fine, they're beautiful, they're plentiful. Hey, I found a family restroom that I happened to need and was able to utilize it. First, again, branding under aesthetics, that everything looks good. The wood boardwalk, that we're well maintained, simple and uncluttered. When I go back and look at these boardwalk pictures, the comparison of the street scenes, it's easy for me to go put a big X through Atlantic City scenes, Seaside Heights with their chairlift that parallels the boardwalk, with Point Pleasant that has carnival rides, and all those with the carnival atmosphere. That, to me, that's not us at all. So it's easy to X those out. What I am attracted to are those boardwalks like comparable in our size, in fact, Avon by the Sea, Belmar, some of those that are small, narrow boardwalks that are generally wood, but some of them have composite, but they've got the light poles down. I call that a simple, uncluttered elegance for me. And that's what I think attracts a lot of people to our town. If they want to go to the carnival atmosphere, then they're going to go north or south or something like that. So,
I think the branding that we have is exactly what you're talking about. Is that if you read any articles about Rehoboth Beach of other people's impressions, they always say it's a charming, a relaxed atmosphere, those type of things, clean aesthetics, clean lines, everything. What we're doing is accenting what's already here. The lakes, the trees, the beach. I mean, that's what you want to accent. That's what makes us a little bit different than some of the other beach towns because they're all sand. That's it. I mean, all the way around them, just sand.
and concrete.
Yep.
Did anything strike anybody? Want to approach anything for our boardwalk? I tried to divide them into categories for comparisons, such as maintenance, new and expanded amenities, and not interested. Maintenance, I said, well, of everything. Like we said, the restrooms that were just beautifully renovated. You know, if we have every year, fresh painted water fountains, you know, those are the type of things that excite me, that I think the public notices. You know?
Well, and I mean, just to tie into what you said, Stan, I think as long as I've been on the committee, whenever, you know, we get public input of, you know, like the whole issue with the bathrooms, we addressed it. And I think, you know, by doing what we're doing with, you know, the expansion of, you know, the other restroom facilities. So, you know, I think a lady had sent in an email to the committee or the commissioners that, you know, I think it was her husband who, you know, needed assistance using the bathroom and things like that. I mean, we're addressing a lot of things. we don't get many, your boardwalk's dirty, your boardwalk's this, your boardwalk's that. I think a lot of people really enjoy everything that our boardwalk does have to offer. And I think, we have listened to what, a lot of people have said. And it's, we like everything on the boardwalk, but these are some things, and it's just changing with the times. This is what's needed. We just have to, change a little bit with the time. So, I mean, my opinion is, I think our boardwalk's great. I think we have a lot of visitors who come in from all over the country, family to visit us. And I think the one thing that they've always said is, when they come back to Rehoboth, it's that home, it's like your home. It's that comfortable feeling. It's not commercialized in any way. It's always nice to walk on the boardwalk, whether it's the daytime, the nighttime. There's a lot of things to do on it, and it's nice.
I agree with you. I think it is great in a lot of ways, but if we want more people to know about that, then it's a marketing question. So do you want to market, the beach and the boardwalk separately, and do you want to allocate any funds to the marketing so that visitors or would-be visitors know that, hey, Rehoboth has got a great boardwalk and a great beach? Because I would imagine, there probably aren't any residents that are unaware that we have a great boardwalk, but there probably are some visitors who are unaware that, hey, Rehoboth has this great boardwalk, and it's a traditional, simple, well-maintained, safe, outlet for families and visitors to come and enjoy.
I can actually add to that. Being in basically the hospitality profession, the biggest feedback that we get, and the committee should know, we get visitors from all around the world. Every single day there's somebody in the condominium visiting Rehoboth Beach from another part of the world. And the feedback that we get is, we didn't know this place existed. There seems to be a lack of marketing for Rehoboth. I don't know whose responsibility that is, whether it's Chamber of Commerce, whether it's the commissioners, I don't know. But that's the biggest negative feedback. And everybody that's been almost always comes back, because now they've found us, now they like us, now they want to come back to us.
Maybe the marketing could be the best kept secret type thing, but.
Yeah.
Brian manages the Star of the Sea right on the boardwalk, by the way. Well, I think somebody hit it, maybe Jimmy, that when I started looking at the comparison of slides in the other towns, I said, I like the simple, I like the uncluttered. I think there are some amenities and I've listed here that are considerations, but I'm more focused on not boogering up.
Agreed, yeah.
The brand or what we have, and that's my biggest fear, that, do we really need to keep up with the Joneses? Do we need to keep up with the others? And I think not. But you also hit on, do we need to keep up pace with changes or new technology or new things going on? So maybe there are some things that we can look at. Again, here's my list. I just am doing it so that we can get the conversation going and feedback. Again, I divided things into maintenance, newer expanded amenities, and not interested. So for newer expanded amenities, again, this is based on a lot of the other towns. Changing rooms are important. Sufficiency of restrooms, security cameras, speakers, mini vehicles on the boardwalk, recycling, showers, beach accessibility with the mats and the beach wheels, lifeguard, second floor visibility. Those are all things that all these other successful boardwalk towns already have, and they're already things that we're already looking into. So that's a good feeling there. For brand new things, I wrote down some slides and slide numbers. If you want me to go to any slide, then speak up. But otherwise, I'm just going to read through that. One town had a sign there that said no drones. I have been on the boardwalk when there's been a drone going up and down the dunes. I tell you, it's noisy, and frankly, I think it's scary, and I think it's potentially an intrusion of people's lives or something. So for me, I would want to consider passing that on to the commissioners. Should there be an ordinance to control drones or something like
Yeah.
that.
I was in a yoga class on the beach and a drone came right over. It was 10 feet over my head. It was just so shocking. And I talked to some guy at the lifeguard stand there, and he was very nice. And he went in and did all kinds of research on it and then left me this very detailed voice message. They are allowed to fly over the dunes only. That's it. But I don't know how you monitor that. It was quite frightening to have this thing right over my
But
head.
who allows them to fly over there? In other words, could a
Yeah.
city ordinance prohibit that? I
Yeah.
would.
I think it's an
He said there is an
FCC rule.
ordinance.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
there's an FCC rule as well, that they can't fly drones over populated areas. So that rules out the boardwalk and the
I
beach.
think
They can.
I think they can't if they're licensed
If they're
because
licensed.
they do it for real estate all
We
the
do it
time.
for real estate a lot.
For real
Yeah.
estate, yeah, yeah.
So that's one question I have. The other was, there was some lifeguard on duty and hour signs. I don't know if we have those or not. I can't remember. If it says lifeguard is
Does
off
say-
duty
does say-
or on duty.
Yeah,
Do we have such a thing?
yeah.
You can easily tell if they're on duty or not.
There was a stranded mammal sign, I thought. And I say some of these with caution because I hate signs. I used to be in the sign industry, but I hate signs because I think it kind of
Tacky.
the visual clutter, you know? So these are kind of yes, maybes type of things, you know, stranded mammal sign. Yeah,
Stan, I don't want to get off track or introduce
Yeah.
you, but if you've read the news or you've seen that we have a possibility of a wind farm off of our shores, and it technically might be in Maryland waters, but from everything I've heard, it'll be more visible from here and from Dewey. So it's probably a future item, and I'm sure the commissioners and the mayor are working on it, but I think this could greatly affect, I mean, big picture stuff, you know, you throw up there the possibility of these wind farms, and it could really detract from the aesthetics of the town and the boardwalk and the beach.
can I ask Sharon, has the city taken a position on the wind farms out there or ACT or anybody, do you recall?
Morning. So, so the ACT group, the Association of Coastal Towns, has been discussing, which Rehoboth is a member of. We've been discussing that, and there's been no position, but it's still in the discussion stages. There's many presentations upcoming about it. So.
Okay, so I'm not sure that we need to take it up, but something to be attentive to.
Be
Okay.
thoroughly discussed.
Thank you, Sharon, thank you.
Stan,
Yeah,
in regards to the signs, I'm sure there's a reason why, but is there a reason why there's not a sign at the jetties to let people know that they can't sit on them or stand on them?
There used to be.
There used to be
Yeah.
one, like, it's 30 feet in front of it, which
Yeah.
didn't do any good. Because as you're walking down the beach, you don't see it. But, I mean, all day long, the lifeguards are whistling at people and being distracted by people who are on the jetties. And, you know, it takes their eyes off the beach.
I don't know, I would think that the beach patrol wanted it, then they would ask for it and receive it, so, but I don't know the answer. Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was a DENRAC thing or.
No, we've got control of that. Yeah,
One item that's not been touched on is parking in Rehoboth. That seems to be a big negative issue. Any negativity that we do get back is a lack of parking in Rehoboth.
well, that I think would be the purview of the parking committee, but yeah, it impacts us, definitely, yeah.
They've been going through that whole process.
Yeah, right. Just real quick, what I can do is distribute my list and then you all can add to it or whatever, so that for December, we're have a more vibrant conversation about some of these things. A lot of these towns have a beach map online on their websites that show, like we've got the little map under the rule sign, they've got something similar online to show everybody where things are. That might be a good addition to our website. I just made some notes for some slides that show mopped floors. They do a lot of mopping of the floors in the restroom, which makes sense. But they also have these fans in there, special fans to help dry it out very quickly. They also have out-of-service signs. And the reason I noted that is because If we're gonna have some kind of signage that's needed on a frequent basis, my thought is, let's have some professional looking signs made up rather than hand-drawn signs that are, then get moist and kind of drip and things like that. The attendance, most of the other towns had attendance, especially for restrooms over 2 stalls or so big. And we know that they're a deterrent, and from being on the tours, those with attendance were very clean and everything. There's some restroom location signage, lighting intensity was important. Somebody has an AED. I don't know whether that's something that we might find that should be available to the public. And again, we're such a small town, you know, we get a problem, if we call the police, they're there within a minute anyhow.
Isn't there one at the lifeguard stand? Lifeguard station.
I
think
don't know.
There's a sign for it, I believe.
Is it available to the public like right now?
Oh, that I don't know.
Oh,
I mean, I know during
talking
the,
about year-round kind of thing, yeah.
that I don't know.
So that I don't know. And then the numbering of the light poles, you know, in the past, people have wanted to point out a light that's out and be easy to describe it with a number. So that's, you can see that slide 666 if you want to look it up. And then I had some yes, maybe. There was a sign that said, in the event of thunder, run for it, or whatever it says. Shower rules. Yeah, again, these are yes buts. They have these big signs like this with the shower rules, you know, that are important. That don't use soap and be polite and no nudity and all that. I think are very important. But I'm torn between putting a big sign there that kind of offends me even more so. So I'm putting a question. The notes are, somebody had a QR code on beach safety, and that was kind of neat. Does anybody use QR codes anymore? I don't know, is that passe? Welcome, there's a welcome sign, a keep clean sign, a water fill station. You know,
That's a good idea, yeah.
Do people use those a lot?
We had some properties that we have, and people use them all the time. And the thing that was amazing, it cut down on the plastic water bottles considerably because, I mean, if you look at it, everyone's carrying around the bottle with the clip. And like school kids, they just put it on their backpack. I mean, they always have them. And they're like almost every school you go into, high school, college, grade school, they have the water fountain that just has the water bottle fill, I guess, adapter or whatever you want to call it, to it. And they just use it.
One of the towns had an information person. They had a yellow vest with information or something on it, and people were just flocking to them all the time.
I bet.
I know that's kind of neat, but we think we have our seasonals, and I think people go to them with questions, or they can go to the information kiosk. I'm not sure we would want to invest in that, but I thought it was interesting to me. I'm gonna just show you 3 things I'm not interested in. I don't know where it is. I'll just describe it. Commercialization, there's a section in here called commercialization, right? And we've got, it's like 300. This is maybe a conversation we could have at a future meeting. A lot of these boardwalks have these commercial signs pointing to businesses. Here's a business right on the beach. A lot of these towns kind of get free product in trade for advertising. Here's the one I was talking about, that this may or may not be a result of that Coca-Cola grant recycling program, but you can see there's kind of a trade-off here. We'll give you something free if, look, there's Coca-Cola again. There's Coca-Cola again. So my point is, I'm against anything commercialization, and we can put that on the next, because I would like to have other people's thoughts and maybe come up with a formal statement for the commissioners or something. The other one that the commissioners are talking about, aren't you glad I'm not going through one at a time?
Oh, yes.
I thought about it. I invested a lot of time in here, by golly. So, the commissioners are at this point looking at newspaper boxes to see if they can regulate them. They're just proliferating all town. There's a location with 1 or 2. They're in front of Louis. I think there's 14.
Yeah.
And they're hiding the parking meters, and they're hiding the parking fine boxes and everything. So they're taking a look at it, but and what they're doing to deal with it is propose locations where they can go. And so I just saw these on here, and I want to make sure that they don't get onto the boardwalk.
They'll keep them off the boardwalk.
Yeah. So that's why I brought that up.
Sanders, is it true that that's a free speech issue?
It is, but there's different things. You can regulate where they go. You can't ban them outright. And there's, I think, a difference between a newspaper and the auto trader or something like that. So there's.
Because they had that row of them by the post office, by the seafood restaurant. There's like that stretch right there. Yeah, claws.
So I don't know where to go with this. I've kind of gone through my preliminary list. I can distribute that to you all. We can continue this discussion. But I think the point is that if we've got any recommendations that require funding, then we need to get those to the commission. And not that we have to seek anything out, but do we desire something? Because again, there's going to be, I think, a lot of consideration for all the restrooms and all changing rooms and all those other things that we've heard about. Those are big ticket items, a lot of those.
Can we get an update on security cameras?
For the next meeting, sure. Yeah.
I think the one thing that's important is that for just keeping up the infrastructure that we have right now on the boardwalk is going to take some money to keep it at the level that we want it all the time. So I'd rather see, rather than buy new things that we really don't need or add new things that are going to take maintenance down the road, just maintain what we have and keep that up to par with, as pristine as possible.
Is there any doubt that the boardwalk will remain wood?
Well, Kevin wanted to have that conversation. I guess we'll have that in December too, but we can broach that conversation here. Where is decking? 158.
I'm not even second guessing.
One of the things that I talked with Kevin about after the last meeting, one of the things I talked with Kevin about at the last meeting, Kevin mentioned he needed to start talking about the boardwalk replacement or the current program. You're still here. Oh, good. You can get in on this conversation. And I got to be more accurate then. Let's see. If you recall, the program right now is we replace one board at a time. And that kind of program stemmed from the original boardwalk committee that I chaired 10 to 12 years ago. We got that idea from Ocean City, Maryland, because that's how they were doing it at the time. And I believe the philosophy there was that by replacing a board one at a time, you wait until it's just absolutely at the end of its life, and you've maximized that life, and then you replace it. Whereas if you go and pick a whole block to do, you might have 50% of those boards that could have another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years life on them. Okay, but there's trade-offs. You do the board one at a time. It takes a lot longer to tear up one at a time and replace it. It gives you that checkerboard pattern, which I don't care about. I think it doesn't bother me at all. And you can see some of the boards how they're checkerboard there. Let's see, 158, we're getting down there. So if you've gone through these slides, or I encourage you to go through the slides, you'll see that a good number of them I've changed over to composite. And there's pluses or minuses to composite. I'm a purist. I like the wood decking. Here's the kind of wood in Avon by the Sea 10 years ago, and they've still got that kind of product today, because this is today. The grooves are, I believe, curves to help keep it from cupping, and it's actually installed upside down. Maybe they did it for looks or aesthetics or
Is
something.
that composite?
No, that's
Okay.
wood. And, this is a composite in Belmar. This is the second time they must have replaced this after Sandy, because 10 years ago when I was up there, they had just installed some. And with plastic, you've got to deal with installing it correctly, because it expands and contracts. And when they had first installed it, they installed it butting it the long lengths very tight together. And that was fine in the wintertime, but then in the summertime, it actually bowed up like this. And they had to go and cut them all shorter and everything. And you can see there's colorations, and you can do fancy things with the different colors if you choose. But you've got a maximum length, I believe, of 16 feet. So you're gonna have a lot of splices, which our program on the boardwalk, we decided that we would only use single length boards. So I think the longest are 22 feet, because we were at a point, the previous boardwalk, I don't know if you remember, but it was boring, it was terrible. So we did that, and it seemed to work very well. But you can see some of the different, this is wood grain. Now understand, there's Belmar way back 10 years ago. Belmar today, so again, Ocean Grove was a wood boardwalk, and after Sandy, they started changing some of it over to composite. If we want to get into the boardwalk wood species discussion beyond what we want subjectively, I guess, then we can do some more analysis in December. But I think, Kevin, I think Ipe, it's a rainforest wood. You do that, and you get a lot of environmentalists that are going to come out against you. Wildwood found out, and a lot of the others. And yet, here's the same Ipe in Atlantic City. And when I met with Public Works in Atlantic City, they said it was all by chance the load of lumber you got. Some of it was good, and some of it did this kind of thing. And you can find the same thing with Ipe, I-P-E, up at the Lewis Ferry Terminal. They have Ipe there. Some of it's absolutely gorgeous, and some of it's starting to deteriorate. So I don't know if there's a perfect wood. And you've got Bethany Beach that has, this is wildwood. Now this Bethany Beach has a product called Kevany. So there's different wood products you can do that maintain the flavor that hopefully lasts longer than, for instance, the southern yellow pine that we use. Here's some of the problems you see walking our boardwalk. I'm sure you're familiar with them. And they come along and mark individual boards with an orange stripe, and that indicates this is the board that needs to be pulled up and replaced. And this is the test board area. It's still in place down there. And the interesting thing here is we thought when we placed this 10 years ago that let's do wood grain, because we thought if you did change the composite, at least make it look more like wood. The only problem we found over the years is that the trash truck would run over it and it abrade and wear off the wood grain. So what's the point in paying extra for it if it's going to wear off? And that's, I guess, the difference with a lot of the other New Jersey boardwalk towns is they don't have the big trucks on there. So they don't have the damage to the boardwalk. So, here's again, some of the great work that our guys do in just replacing some of the boards. And so that comes to a conversation, Kevin, you had suggested that regardless of whether you continue to replace individual boards or decided to pick a block, 2 block, 3 block sections, needed to decide whether it was continue to be wood or to change over to be composite. And so we can have that little conversation right now, just on the surface, because if we get deep into it, we may find that if you want to know the pricing difference and all that stuff, then we need to do more research. Does anybody just off the top of their head? Again, I'm a purist. I like the wood.
Yeah.
We get a lot of accolades for an old-fashioned wood boardwalk, and so I would be hesitant at this point to recommend even further analysis of composite.
We'd have a mutiny, I think, most of the people around town if we changed it from wood at this point. That's one of our iconic things that you look at is the wood.
I like it the way it is. I like the wood. I mean, they're great at maintaining it. I mean, as much as I walk the board, as much as we all walk the boardwalk, I mean, they'll come in and mark a bad piece if somebody reports it. I mean, it's gone and replaced really quickly and everything else. I just think, that's a key asset that this town has is the wood boardwalk.
Yeah, I would never want to see composite up there. Definitely want to see the wood.
Anybody want to stick your neck out?
Yeah.
For composite?
I think they enjoy watching, is the guy's name Bob that replaces the boards? Joe. I think they enjoy watching him do his work too. What do they do with the old boards?
I believe they're landfill. They're hard to recycle because of the CCA treatment.
Okay, so we can't sell them or?
No. And look at it. I mean, you could in theory turn them over.
Right.
But then you've got all the nail holes every 8 inches and they're a mess. Plus again, they have some toxicity. They're not as bad as the old arsenic thing, but still. Anybody else have?
Kevin, what's the opinion of the guys in the carpenter shop, the ones that do the work? If you ask them candidly.
One is, it would be helpful to us if you would make a recommendation to whatever the group working on the CDP is, to say this is iconic to the city of Rehoboth and it's going to remain wood.
Right.
And say we want it to remain wood. That takes a whole bunch off our plate with keeping to investigate, okay, what kind of Trex deck is out there and how much it is, right, all those things. And we'll just focus on doing the deck, wood deck. And then, obviously Joe loves it. Because he's out there interacting with the community. Oh yeah. People on the boardwalk love talking to him, they love doing them. But the production rate is horrible.
It is.
Right? Horrible. He may get 1 board a day. Yeah. Right? Which is it's ridiculous because everybody's talking to him and he won't say no to him. And so part of that's our problem is, kind of making him focus on his job and maybe not so much on the.
That's part of the charm of the town too.
That's a tough thing.
That's part of the charm of the town though. You can't, that's the part that goes with it,
You sit around and you talk to people from out of town, on 4th of July, sitting out on the benches, and they love talking to the trash guys. Talking to Joe. They all know him.
They do, yeah.
There's a couple from Kentucky that comes every 4th of July week. I'm sitting there talking about, we always come find Joe. He's like part of the family.
Well, that's why I think Joe would like wood so that the frequency of changing it is perpetual.
Yeah.
And he's always up.
And he's outside on the board.
The heartache I have is that I can't keep up with the boards that need to be replaced with just Joe.
The downside of the system that you've got going at the moment is if Joe, and I've watched Joe for many years and he's a real nice guy and everything you say about him is right. But the downside is you've got a carpenter's truck, you've got a huge trailer, and you've got a generator sitting in front of your building for sometimes over a week during the height of the summer. And if somebody's got a ocean and has paid a lot of money to sit on an oceanfront property, on a balcony, on the oceanfront, they don't want to sit there, and for that week, to listen to a generator and drills and everything else.
Well, I think that problem could happen even with composite or something. I think what has to be resolved is we don't do major restoration work in the summer months.
Well, there has been,
I mean, what I'm saying is we should not be doing
yes,
it.
yeah.
And yet I know that we often do because some of the boards literally crap out,
Yeah, overnight.
Mid-season.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
while you're doing it. But I think you're right. The practice should not be that we're out there as often as perhaps we have been in the summertime. Like that.
Our process is that we go through in the wintertime or just before spring, mark them all, try to do a mass replacement of what we can do prior to the season. And then just do the things that come up during the season.
Kevin, do you have any idea how much the city budgets for plank replacement approximately, or how many approximately they do, or what percentage of the boardwalk is replaced every year? Just
I mean, it
round.
varies obviously by the year. I mean, we're at year whatever now on the boardwalk. And Ken, when did we reconstruct it?
About 2009 and 2010.
Right, and I think what our position would be that those boards have about, a good board has about a 9-year life expectancy.
Well, and the interesting thing is, let's say from day one when we replace a section, whether it's going forward or go back 10 years when we did that, replace it, they're all brand new the first year. The next year, we had to replace 2% of the boards because they just deteriorated all that quickly, 2%. The next year, we had maybe another 6% to replace. The third year, we had probably 15%. I'm just making these numbers up, but you see, it's not as if you replace a whole block and we wait 8 years before we have to do anything. It's immediate that very next year, and it's frustrating. And now composite, you wouldn't have to do that. For me, again, I'm a wood purist. I look at it as the cost of doing business. We budget it in, we do it, and that's the cost for doing the business and maintaining and having an infamous wood old-fashioned boardwalk.
Well, I think, I'm sorry.
I'll just go back to the question about the cost. We just had this meeting, budget meeting last week. I think it's 80,000 is in 4-deck boards for the upcoming year.
You think it's fair to say in any given year you might have 10% of the boards replaced, or?
It goes up each year,
Okay.
as Dan was just saying. So I guess, again, from my perspective, in order to keep up with it, if it continues the way it's going, is I need additional resources to maintain the board platform replacement. Even if we mass in the spring, do everything we can, again, additional resources, and we would budget for that. Maybe it's an additional carpenter we bring on in the season, maybe just to help Joe during the season, something, but to think through and put a number in there into the budget for that, if that's, I'm here for that.
Yeah, and see, there would be different programs. If we decided to change over to composite, then his thinking is, okay, how do I do that? I'm probably not gonna start doing that on individual boards, but I'm gonna plan a four block area this year, and then after that. And then while I'm doing those 4 blocks, I've still gotta do the individual wood boards there. Whereas the program, if we stay with wood, would be different. He can keep doing the 1 board at a time thing, and he'll have to analyze, I imagine, whether you would continue with 1 board or whether you would bite the bullet. But regardless of the way we go, he then needs to present in a budget the request for additional labor, because we can't handle it either way. And I understand that, especially because we're almost 10 years beyond. And so we've got, I don't know if anybody knows, Ocean City, Maryland announced, 3 weeks ago, that they're gonna be replacing some sections. And I didn't hear them say anything other than wood, so I think what Kevin would like us to do is make a statement, if we can, on preserving the wood or doing further
I think
investigation.
we're in agreement on on the wood.
Does he just
so-
need to hear from us, or do we need to make a recommendation to council, and council will?
No, well, I think we would make it to the city manager and him, and then they take it from there.
I think there's no appetite to change the wood to any other product.
Do we have to do this through some sort of resolution from the committee or just a vote?
Well, it would probably be good to have a motion to, what's the simplest thing we can say, Kevin, to preserve our iconic old-fashioned wood boardwalk.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
That sounds good.
So moved?
So move.
Second?
Second. All those in favor of retaining the iconic old-fashioned wood boardwalk versus going to composite, changing over to composite, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Very good. And that motion contains, so we'll send you a little memo if we need to follow up. I'm sorry, we took a vote before we asked anybody. Now that you know, now that you know how we feel, do you oppose? No? Okay, thank you.
The hotel tax will come in just in time.
Okay. Well, we haven't gotten any farther into comparison of towns and other things we need. Let's just bring it up again, perhaps at the December meeting.
Yep.
And I'll send out my list, but then if you all could come up with a list, if there's anything, if we want that water filling station, then let's put it in. Part of the logistics is where do these things go? But that would be left over to them, AEDs, do we have enough AEDs, are they proper or not? If we make that recommendation, they can still do further analysis on that. So is that a good way to approach the rest of these? So gives you more time to go through
More slides.
1,000 slides.
989 slides or something like that.
On the wall.
Anything else good of the, let's see, anything else good of the order?
We have a date for December meeting?
Next meeting is Monday, December 16th. We'll take up on this. I'm not sure we'll even need the full 2 hours, but we'll see what we come up with for agenda. See if there's anything else to do. Anybody comments out? Nobody else? Kevin, you've got something?
Just wanted to, at some meeting previous to this, you talked about, would the committee look at, if there were a catastrophic event, took the boardwalk out, what would we do differently if we were gonna rebuild it from scratch? If we could ask that, if I could ask that, get that back on an agenda at some point.
That would be the December, and actually that kind of maybe stems from this.
Yeah.
That this would be, we could look at it from one optic. What do we like to do now or in the next 2 years or something? But as Kevin mentioned, and I had brought up before, if the boardwalk were torn down in a catastrophic storm and we were to rebuild it, would we do anything different? Off the top of my head, we might do all the lights different. Now, actually, I'm saying that prior to all this wireless stuff. Now that we're getting this wireless stuff, those things aren't gonna change once we get them in. So we're not gonna maybe resolve your problems with lights or something. But there might be other things that we chose to, somebody might ask, well, can we change the footprint of the boardwalk? That kind of thing. The answer is no, but somebody, but somebody could ask it.
Yep.
And are there any other things that we could do? Better or more vehicular accesses or something like that. So I think that's a very important question because at the time the boardwalk is torn down, want to get that thing rebuilt. I'm going to hire the engineers the next day and get the design going for rebuilding it. And we have to have these things thought ahead or something. So if anybody else has anything for future agenda content, let me know now or give me an email of things that you'd like to talk about. Of course, I asked the city manager, and I'm going to ask her for her departments if they have anything that they would like us to look at, as well as the mayor and commissioners. I'll ask them again. Okay, because we're kind of maybe winding down and rest and
Yeah.
proper feed bumps.
I have one comment for Kevin's information. All this discussion that you're having about the bike trails and things up the north end, they really should keep in consideration that the trash trucks do go on and off up at that north end through the handicap spot.
They better not.
They are.
They better not.
I'm sorry, I have submitted pictures showing that, yes, they are.
Well, then I want to,
Sorry.
then let me put you on the spot too, because I've seen the small, medium trash truck on and off also. And, you know,
That's what I mean,
Here
yeah.
here we're hearing that, no, it's not on there, but it is. And then Honey sends me pictures every so often validating that they're still going off, you know, with the Polaris and the trailer up there, not the medium truck because it won't
Right.
fit. So this is more for
Yeah.
your awareness.
That's good feedback, because they're
Yeah.
not supposed to.
For
I'm
your-
not complaining about it. I mean,
Well,
they're-
I am.
Well-
We told them numerous times.
their emergency vehicles come off and on there as well.
Oh, yeah.
They do. Ambulances can't come up that.
So one thing with the consultant that's looking at that master plan, we gave him the presentation y'all put together for, I guess, the joint meeting, which was very helpful.
Bike routing.
Seen all those things that you guys had recommended with respect to what.
Bicycle routing in the north.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yes.
he's got all that, the preliminary work that both of the committees did, so he's using that, and, I think both committees will like what he's coming up with. But thanks, they are not supposed to be coming across that.
No, they're so nice.
I don't care.
I know.
They're not supposed to come across that.
Yeah.
All right, anything else go to the order? Anybody? If not, note I'm getting you out actually early today.
Wow.
We'll
Thank
adjourn
you.
the-
Thank you.
Adjourn the meeting at 10:57.